Security Breach has plenty of characters with interesting personalities and designs, and most of them are yet to go through proper character arcs. Some of the characters have almost non-existent arcs, like Monty, Chica or Sun, while for example Vanessa's arc was completely fumbled during Security Breach's development. But today we are talking about a character who has the most complete arc in the story, Roxanne Wolf and her redemption. To understand Roxy, we must understand one fact from FNAF's history. Foxy is very popular, and I mean each of his variants throughout the series. Since Roxanne Wolf is replacing him, this has placed very high expectations on her. She had big shoes to fill, and quite possibly this is one of the explanations for all of her insecurities. Today Roxy is one of the most popular characters in Steelwool's era, and probably even in both eras. However, the player's attitude towards her can be quite a roller coaster, with both highs and lows. The first proper appearance of Roxy happened in Security Breach, although some could argue that it happened long before that in Freddy in Space 2 and Fury's Rage. But Freddy in Space 2 had only this art. Roxy herself wasn't in the game, while Fury's Rage was just an apology from Scott. Neither of them had anything substantial for Roxy, so let's move on to Security Breach. The first impression that the player will get about Roxy is that she likes to show off and she appears to be confident, as can be seen in several clips in the intro. The most interesting moment, although hard to notice, is this one where it looks like she is preparing herself to be in the spotlight. However, immediately after the intro, all of this is contradicted by the way she behaves in her room when she is alone.
Your performance was perfect tonight! Thank you. Your hair is beautiful. Your tail is beautiful. Everyone was watching you. Everyone loves you. Everyone wants to be you. You are the best. Thank you. I am the best. I am the best.
Some could see this as a clear sign that she is a narcissist. And while Roxy is indeed a narcissist to some extent, this here shows us her lack of confidence, contrary to what we just saw at the concert. She needs reassurance that she is the best and that everything went perfect. This start of the game gives the player a very basic understanding of what her character is about. Roxy is supposed to be the best. She is programmed to think that, and yet deep inside she has doubts and wants to prove her worth.
Your fans are watching you right now. I know.
The last line that she says here can be interpreted in two ways. Either she is breaking the fourth wall by speaking directly to the player, or, as we will learn later, she can see through walls and it's possible that she saw Gregory. Since Glamrock's weren't alerted to hunt Gregory at the time, she could have thought that it's just some fan of hers peeking through the vent. Wait, does that mean that her fans do that often? The next time we see Roxy she is already hostile, but for a while there won't be an opportunity to take a good look at her or to listen to what she says. In the utility tunnels she can't participate in the chase after Gregory because of the fence, and in the daycare she arrives together with other Glamrocks, so there won't be much time to stick around. Only some time after that the player will encounter Roxy in her full glory. The way she behaves basically asks the player to dislike her. The things she says often attempt to belittle Gregory as much as possible. We can guess that she says things that would hurt her, and with how the employees treat Glamrocks, it's possible that she says stuff that was said to her before. At this moment, the player might begin to wonder why would Fazbear Entertainment create an animatronic who would bully the clients. And at this point of the story, there won't be an answer as to why Roxy behaves like this. But from the way how Freddy tries to defend Glamrocks, the player can at least get a suspicion that this is not Roxy's normal state. Unlike other Glamrocks, Roxy's lines are very diverse in their mood and tactics she tries to use to lure Gregory out. Sometimes she tries to play nice.
Hey kid, come on out. We're only trying to help. Are you lost? I can help. Are you hungry?
Sometimes she intimidates him.
There's nowhere to hide. Do you really think we won't find you? You can't hide forever.
Sometimes she tries to bully him and elevate her importance over him.
Sneak away, little coward. I bet you don't even have friends. You are nothing! Nobody will miss you.
Sometimes she assumes that he might be her fan and tries to appeal to that, while stroking her ego, of course.
Want an autograph? I bet I'm your favorite.
With all this bullying on her part, it's not surprising that the player can become annoyed by Roxy, and this can be amplified by the East Arcade section of the game, which is being patrolled by Roxy and can be hard to navigate for a new player. From this point onward, Roxy will be present in the most sections of the game, as she will play her part in the backstage booth and atrium. These sections will take some time to get through, so the player will get used to Roxy being rude. A slight change of pace will happen after the parts and service. It is here where we learn that Roxy has unique upgraded eyes.
Roxy sees things differently than the others. This upgrade was meant to help her win races. However, there are some side effects. Sometimes she'll just stare and talk to the other bots through walls.
This message looks very simple at first, but it can raise some interesting questions. If Fazbear Entertainment installed these eyes to help her win races, does that mean that she was losing in races often? Or was she losing on purpose to keep the kids happy? It could mean that she is a winner only on a paper, and it's possible that the new eyes made her feel like a cheater. If at least some of this true, it's not shocking that she is so insecure. Mere minutes later we see Roxy crying in her room, after Vanessa presumably rebuked her. If we peek out from the door a little bit, we can see that Roxy was so distracted by her own emotions that she didn't even realize that her target is right here.
Who's there? It's nothing. Don't get distracted. Don't be a loser. Get back out there!
Whatever Vanessa said to Roxy, it hit Roxy hard, and all her vulnerability came to the surface. Both this moment and the information about her eyes gives us a very interesting implication. If Roxy can see through walls, this could mean that she saw everything that happened behind the walls in parts and service. So not only she replaces a very popular character from the past, but she might also know that she is not unique and that she can be easily replaced. So, with this attitude from Vanessa towards her, with the way how Fazbear Entertainment doesn't give a damn about glam rocks, and with the knowledge that her mistake can cost her everything, it's pretty obvious how it affects her. Why she needs to talk to herself before the mirror, and why she starts crying after failing in her hunt for Gregory. Her desperation for validation is perfectly conveyed through her chase animations. When she runs after you, she doesn't have the elegance we saw at the beginning of the game. She completely loses her mind as she tries to prove her worth, not just to those around her, but also to herself, shouting that she is the best as if her words can change reality.
You can't outrun me! You think you're better than me? I'm the best!
For now, Roxy goes to patrol the atrium and her domain, Roxy Raceway. This is why it feels like Roxy has a huge presence in the game. She is patrolling two most important parts of the map. To get her eyes, we must first shatter either Chica or Monty, which only adds to the feeling that Roxy is special. While exploring the areas around the Pizzaplex, we can guess that some staff members might be big fans of Roxy, because there's plenty of pictures of her on the security desks. And in the daycare, we can see this setup with plushie of Roxy doing a photo session, most likely for the future merch ads. When we finally open the Roxy Raceway, we are greeted with this announcement.
Hey, I'm Roxanne Wolf. If you're looking for high-speed motor mayhem, Roxy Raceway is the place to be. Sign up today and be a winner! Nobody likes a loser.
While it sounds pretty generic, it further shows what kind of mentality Roxy was programmed with. Be it just a side effect or the influence of the storyteller, of which we will learn about later, but now being a winner was not enough for her, and she started to belittle everyone around, in a twisted logic that belittling others will help her to appear better than them. She wants to be liked, and she's afraid that she won't be liked if she fails. Nobody likes a loser. In the raceway we can find more information about Roxy and her problematic behavior. Roxy Raceway was closed for a long time, which only added to Roxy's distressed condition. In her anger and frustration, she is unable to control herself, and was constantly destroying the test driver bots, which only led to a slower restoration of the track.
Roxy never misses a race. She must be frying her circuits waiting for the raceway to reopen. Every time there's a test run on the track, she gets in the way. If she keeps getting in the way, the track will never get fixed.
And this blind anger will be her downfall, as this information gives the player a clue what to do. Until this point, while the player maybe doesn't feel pity for Roxy, it's very easy to understand what is going on with her. But now it's time for her shattering. For some it will already be enough to feel bad for her. It's not only about the way she was shattered, but what happens afterwards. It is her cries, her coping with reality, and her desperation that can hit hard. More so, her appearance, which she was proud of, is now destroyed. But she can't even assess the damage because Gregory took her eyes. Her hunt after him continues, but she bullies him no more. Despair takes over.
I just need a little work done. My hair is ruined. I am still beautiful. Everybody still loves me, right?
She tries to calm herself, but the cruel reality sinks in as she knows the possible cost of her mistake. She can be replaced. Nobody will know. Nobody will miss her.
Nobody will miss you.
For the rest of the night she will be crying. And since she is patrolling the two most important areas in the game, the players will have the time to compare this new Roxy to Roxy that they saw before the shattering. A constant reminder of what they did. From the gameplay point of view, this was also absolutely unnecessary. You don't need her eyes for any of the endings, and these eyes can be used only to see collectibles through walls. With Security Breach at an end, it's worth saying that overall, Roxy has many more voice lines than Chica or Monty. Knowing in advance her role in Ruin, it is a common speculation that her role in Security Breach could have been planned to be more important. But the only known important cut content related to her is a go-kart minigame. Since at the time not everyone knew that Glitchtrap was controlling Glamrox, it mostly appeared like Roxy deserved what she got, even if it was tragic. And with how her AI is broken in the Bird Trap ending, the player will likely end Security Breach with negative feelings towards Roxy. But this sentiment will begin to shift with the releases of several books from the Tales from the Pizzaplex series. In particular, The Storyteller and GGY. While Roxy is barely present in them, these stories shed the light on the question that I asked before. Why would Fazbear Entertainment create an animatronic who would bully the clients? And as it turned out, they didn't. Roxy wasn't this way before The Storyteller became active. The Storyteller 3, which was based on Mimic 1 program, was changing the behaviors of animatronics, exaggerating or turning them inside out. Roxy's whole thing were her beauty and competitiveness, hence she was overseeing the raceway and beauty salon. She still had an ego, but it wasn't a problem, and was mostly limited to admiring herself in the mirror, asking for compliments, and lightly poking at insecurities of other people. Even then, it was supposed to just rile you up and inspire you to spend more money, but the Storyteller completely distorted everything. The installation of the Storyteller was supposed to return Roxy back to normal, but as we can see in Security Breach, she is still a menace, and there's two possible explanations for this. Either that the changes made by the Storyteller remained, or that Glitchtrap has made the same changes to Glamrox after the GGY, since both the Storyteller and Glitchtrap are parts of the same Mimic program. If we need to see Roxy when the times were calm, we can open the VIP interactive novel and look how she greets Devon after he wins a race while he was looking for his brother.
That was a ferocious performance. Roxy reaches a large gray hand, or paw, down. You take it, the metal cold and hard against your fragile human flesh, and she easily lifts you out of your go-kart. She kicks a tire of the go-kart, Chica fanboy, she sounds disappointed. My little brother is. She walks you back out to the atrium. Want an autograph? She asks. I'd love one. She pulls out a glossy photograph of herself playing a green guitar on stage and scribbles on it. Then she leaves to prepare for the next glam rock show. You read her message. From one winner to another. Good luck finding your brother, Roxy.
While still showing her ego a little bit, she didn't have to wish him to find his brother. One could think that this is because he is a winner, but we are about to see that Roxy indeed had a caring side, hidden behind her facade. Ruin begins for us with two promo arts of this DLC. On the announcement art, the only animatronic we see is Chica, which at the time has led to speculations that the DLC will be about her. However, the release art clearly has Roxy as the main focus, and some began to think that at first Roxy wasn't supposed to be an important part of the story, that it was supposed to be Chica, and that it was changed because of Roxy's popularity. It was reinforced by the fact that the way we are fixing Chica's voice box looks like some sort of a remnant of another story. However, this contradicts to what G-Top said in the interview to John FNAF, where he basically said that the way we are fixing Chica's voice box is how it was always planned to be. So what happens with Roxy in Ruin was most likely planned from the start as well. Ruin opens with subtle attempts to establish for us how Roxy is related to Cassie, by showing us small things like Cassie's green nails or giving us some item descriptions. The DLC is short and Roxy is not present in the first half of it, so every bit of information is important. Cassie's portrayal is also important, as it helps us to understand the meaning of animatronics in her life. The first encounter with Roxy happens in Beauty Saloon, where she almost gave up on everything. She forgot what being a winner means and aimlessly sits there, beating herself for failure.
You're not trying hard enough. We've looked everywhere. He's gone. Don't give up. He is still hiding somewhere.
Her looks, just like her mask of confidence, were now stripping away completely. Yet the voice of Gregory still triggers her. Roxy is not affected by Glitch Trap anymore, but she remembers what Gregory has done, and it's just a desire for revenge.
Gregory. No!
In her broken state, and in this dim light, Roxy looks like a monster. But Cassie still pities her, showing us that these two must have had a strong connection before. Looking outside the saloon, we see two cutouts of Roxy and Cassie, a hint about their past. Meanwhile, in the saloon itself, Steelwool made an ironic neon sign of Roxy that has no eyes, and a sign that says "Wake up" instead of "Make up." It could mean that Roxy needs to wake up from her state and remember who she is supposed to be, but it could also have no deep meaning at all. Looking at the surroundings, we can see scratches from Roxy's nails and dents from her punches. One such punch was landed at the mirror, most likely out of despair that she can't see herself. On the way to Roxy Raceway, we see that Roxy has hit a bucket of paint and left a whole trail of marks. She has troubles orienting in the environment, so she sometimes needs to touch walls. Only after a while we will realize that we are going through an attraction that we never saw in Security Breach, Foxy's Log Ride. There is a bizarre theory that at the beginning times of the Pizzaplex, Glamrock Foxy was a part of the band, and Roxy killed him and took his place. Here we are going through his attraction. However, as we will find out, this attraction was either never finished or closed very early on, and there's no evidence neither in the games nor in the books that Glamrock Foxy was ever in the band. But for Roxy that could mean that if she won't meet expectations of Fazbear Entertainment, they could get back to finishing this attraction and create a replacement for her. Foxy's Log Ride connects Beauty Saloon and Roxy Raceway, so we are back on Roxy's trail. To navigate further, Cassie must lure Roxy forward with audio lures. Mimic cleverly uses Gregory's voice for that instead of Cassie's voice, and in a minute we will find out why. In this segment, if you look at Roxy with your air mask, you will see that she has a hologram that restores her looks. Roxy is the only animatronic to whom that happens, because of Cassie's consciousness. So at this point it's almost guaranteed that the player will suspect that Roxy is important to Cassie, and this will be just reinforced when we reach the end of the level. Cassie has been catched and her scream woke up Roxy from her vengeful hunt.
Give me back my eyes!
Ah! Let go! Let go!
I'm sorry.
That's why the mimic didn't use Cassie's voice as an intercom lure. He knew that Roxy could become a problem. This is a turning point for Roxy, as Cassie just reminded her what she was supposed to be. We can see how shocked Roxy was. Even without a face to give us expressions, the movements of her arms and ears are very articulate. She says sorry and lets Cassie go. A sparkingly different interaction to every other interaction the player had with Roxy before. And then the door conveniently closes right before her face. Yeah, Roxy doesn't have that much screen time in Ruin, but the little screen time that she has was used well. The last piece about Roxy is that Cassie hears how Roxy sings a birthday song, while falling through the Bonnie Bull vent. I think it's a pretty clever way of telling a story. Although, admittedly, it requires the player to collect a puzzle with a lot of small pieces, and missing some of them can damage the first impression. But if you collected all the pieces, you won't need to wait too long for a payoff.
Almost. There's still one node left that's keeping the underground sealed.
Where?
Roxy's the final node. You need to deactivate her.
We get a sudden revelation that Roxy is the final security node, and we must deactivate her to proceed. Or maybe, as I said before, the mimic knew that Roxy is a problem, so he just uses Cassie's hands to deal with her.
Your special day. I remember. Your special day. Do you still like carrot cake? It has been some time since I saw you last. If I remember correctly, it is on the 11th. I remember because you are number 1. Twice. Have you booked your party? I'm sure your friends will show up this time.
This scene is an emotional high point in the entire story. I even have a whole video dedicated to it alone. But for the most interesting parts, Roxy indeed woke up when she recognized Cassie's scream. Some theorize that maybe Roxy rebooted herself into a safe mode, but there is really not much to support that theory, with the exception that Roxy seems to be unaware of her surroundings. Everything she says to Cassie mirrors some of the things she said to Gregory. Now we can finally see how much her behavior was distorted by Glitch Trap.
It has been some time since I saw you last.
Nobody will miss you.
If I remember correctly, it is on the 11th. I remember because you are number 1. Twice.
I'm the best!
I'm sure your friends will show up this time.
I bet you don't even have friends.
After completing the hardest simple puzzle in the game and looking at Roxy's convulsions, we are leaving her here. Probably the only missed potential here is that we can't take this Roxy plushie with us. Of course, if you remember how Cassie used fuzz range on Sun, you probably will suspect that this is not the end. And it isn't. It is a fake out death, but this does not take away the value of the scene. The last thing Roxy saw before deactivation was Cassie seemingly betraying her, but even after that she had enough determination to free herself and follow Cassie into the sinkhole. She is just in time to save her from the mimic and make a last-ditch attempt at fighting him, which goes as bad as expected. We don't see the fight itself, and we only have the sound to judge what happened. We can clearly hear how in the middle of the fight Mimic starts copying Roxy's voice, and then we hear a dull thud, like Roxy was thrown against the wall or the floor.
Give up. You can't.
Roxy calls Cassie one more time before shutting down, and this is where her redemption arc ends for now. The most selfish and egotistical character sacrificed herself for another. For those who love saying that Mimic probably dismembered her or torn her head off, no. there are no sounds of metal being torn, wires being snapped, or limbs falling to the ground. We hear Roxy after the credits, and while it is most likely the Mimic, everything is not that simple. We heard the Mimic copying Roxy's voice in the fight. But he doesn't have a reason to use this voice at the moment where Cassie is under the rubble, most likely unconscious, and can't go anywhere. It was also shown that the Mimic really wants to get out, so when the Freedom is finally right next to him, wasting time on Cassie sounds counterproductive. Even though the story ends in Ruin for now, Roxy appears in the prequel to Ruin, Help Wanted 2, showing us Roxy when she was under glitch trap before Ruin and right after she was shattered. Here we can see how hard it is to work with Roxy when her character traits are exaggerated so much, and it is tied up into the gameplay. You must look at Roxy as much as you can, so she wouldn't get triggered by your lack of attention to her. Of course, she will also be triggered if you fail to dress her properly, and she won't hesitate to threaten you for that.
Look at me! Pay attention to me! I am the star! Are you even trying? You won't last long in this industry.
On the other hand, we also see Roxy when she is broken. She is in panic because she still thinks that she can't be liked in this state, and she is not above of asking us for help.
You need to fix me right now! Nobody will like me! Fix me! I look horrible! How bad is it? Be honest.
Roxy is also very self-aware. She knows that she can be dangerous and warns Jeremy about that.
Here's a little tip. If I ever get in a mood, use the walkie. It calms me. You don't have to say a thing ever. Ever.
It was already established that Roxy thinks that she can't be loved if she is a loser, and that she fears to be forgotten. But here we can also see how she relates this to her appearance. In Security Breach, Roxy has this line.
Why are you hiding from me?
On the surface, why would Roxy ask this when she is the one who constantly tries to attack Gregory? But we are talking about Roxy here, and we know her priorities. Here's a line from Help Wanted 2 that I think can help us here.
I'm not a monster!
She doesn't want to be a monster in the eyes of other people, and she heavily connects it to her looks. It's highly likely that when she was hacked, she misunderstood why Gregory was hiding from her, thinking that he is hiding because she looks like a monster, and not because she tries to kill him. And the way she screams that she is not a monster means that this experience was very traumatic. This is why she was so quick to apologize when she mistook Cassie for Gregory, and why she sounded so shocked and sad.
Sorry. Error.
She recognized Cassie and was afraid that with this mistake and in this deformed appearance, Cassie wouldn't like her anymore. Roxy came to her beauty salon most likely seeking comfort, but this will also play against her. After Security Breach and Ruin, it is a common sentiment that Glamrock should be repaired. But no matter how hard the player will try here, nothing in the salon can help Roxy, and this frustrates her more and more.
It's not good enough! You want me to fail! You're doing this on purpose! It's not working! You could never understand! He did this to me!
At the end we see that it was Jeremy who gave Roxy the mask that we see in Ruin, and this born a new layer of speculation about both this mask and Jeremy. It is easy to say that the Mimic just wanted to get rid of Roxy, but it's hard to deny that Roxy was a security node. The door won't open until you deactivate her, and using fuzz range on her brings up the usual puzzle that every security node has. It is possible that the node was not Roxy herself, but the mask that Jeremy gave her. And considering how Jeremy was all about getting rid of Glitch Trap, it could mean that he gave this mask to Roxy not by accident. With so much stuff going on with Roxy, it was only a matter of time before we would see even more Roxy and her history with Cassie. The last piece of media that we have, the Escape from the Pizzaplex novel, did exactly that. It is considered to be a pretty mediocre book, but it gave us an opportunity to see Glitch Trap directly affecting Roxy. The book events are set in times when Gregory was GGY and was spreading chaos in the Pizzaplex. In the 5 nights of this book, he tried to kill Cassie multiple times, by setting up pranks that were becoming deadlier and deadlier with each passing night. From the beginning, we were shown that Roxy to Cassie is like an idol. The way she describes Roxy, and the way how she sometimes asks herself what would Roxy do in different situations, shows how strong their bond actually is. At one point, Gregory uses Roxy as part of another prank, which hits Cassie hard as she didn't expect such betrayal from Roxy. Roxy was the only one who looked guilty after the prank, and later she comes to Cassie with an apology. As she said herself, "I should have known what happened wouldn't be fun for you, but I didn't, and I don't know why. And I don't think I'm acting normal, something is off." After Cassie suggests to scan her programming, Roxy finds out that Gregory has tampered with it, and he altered it not only to prank Cassie, but also to attack her. Cassie was instantly set on helping Roxy to deal with this problem. The book is an interactive novel, so there are different ways how Cassie could die here, if she won't help Roxy fast enough. While Roxy was still aware of what was happening, she was slowly losing control of herself. Sounds similar to how Freddy was getting hacked in the Bird Trap ending. Often before losing control completely, Roxy said "I'm sorry", unable to fight Glitch Trap anymore. Roxy being aware when losing control gives even more sense as to why in Security Breach Chica was crying when chasing Gregory. Fortunately, Cassie was able to fix Roxy, and together they were able to stop Reagent.
Reagent.
A toxic staff bot whom GGY was giving orders to kill Cassie these nights. Roxy promised Cassie to have her back and saved her multiple times, helping Cassie to escape and commending her for her bravery. Roxy's fate is blurry and her death is unconfirmed. After all, the cliffhanger exists for a reason. She was positioned as a winner, but all we saw is how she lost every fight she had. She lost her mind to Glitch Trap, she lost her eyes to Gregory, and she lost her last stand against the Mimic. But she never gave up, and she won the hearts of the audience. She is maybe self-centered, but she is also a wolf, and wolves are always loyal. Thank you for watching. Press like and subscribe if you liked this video, watch another one if you want to. Good luck, and I'll see you again soon.